Scotland to issue formal ban on genetically modified crops. This comes from The Guardian, August 9th, 2015. Ministers aim to use recent EU powers to opt out of a regime that is expected to see greater commercial use of GM crops around Europe. The long story short here, for those who don't know, is that there have been recent changes to EU law that allow countries across the EU to allow GM crops to be planted in their territory in contravention of long-term and widespread bans on GM crops in Europe. So that's all being turned around at the behest of industry, biotech, and other industry, agribusiness industry. And that is basically opening the floodgates. And in London, the government at Westminster is already signaled that they plan to allow cultivation of GM crops, such as oilseed rape in England, despite opposition from consumers and environmental groups. So basically, despite everyone's opposition, we're going to do it anyway because it benefits our biotech cronies. And that's exactly what's happening now. But in contravention of that trend, there are countries like Scotland that are stepping up to the plate to say that they are going to continue a blanket ban on GM crops. More information can be gleaned from news.scotland.gov.uk, where Rural Affairs Secretary Richard Lochhead has talked about this genetically modified crop ban, why it is in place, and how they're going to continue to use the precautionary principle in relation to GM crops, and intend to take full advantage of the flexibility allowed under these new EU rules to ban GM crops from being grown in Scotland. So, all of you whiskey drinkers out there, please raise a glass of scotch. For the meat eaters, please raise a forkful of Aberdeen Angus beef, although make sure it's actually from Scotland, and celebrate. This is cause to celebrate, and for those who don't know why this is cause to celebrate, well, obviously there is growing concern, even among the scientific elite, about the various types of ways that genetic modification is happening, not only in crops, but now even in wildlife, with gene driving, like we talked about in a recent New World Next Week, and a warning letter that has been written by various scientists, basically saying that this is very likely to produce some extremely large and uncontainable consequences for the environment. So there are things like that. But of course, more importantly, I think, is the fact that the entire gene revolution, as it's called, as opposed to the green revolution of the agribusiness world, the gene revolution of the biotech industry was funded, demonstrably funded into existence by hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars in grants from the Rockefeller Foundation, the Ford Foundation, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the other big name foundations by the big name oligarchs who serve to benefit from this system in a number of different ways, not only the various ways that they can control the food supply, generally speaking, with it, but of course also the profit incentive of Terminator seeds and all of that type of technology. So all of that is reason why we should be cautious and should be applauding countries like Scotland in their GM crop bans. I will have more to say about the business of biotech in this weekend's International Forecaster, but let's just highlight some of the other data points in this trend. For example, last year we saw Russia will not import GMO products, where we had Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev talking about how this is a big country and we don't need to grow genetically modified foods. We have enough space and resources to produce organic food. The money quote here: if the Americans like to eat GMO products, let them eat it then. We don't need to do that. We have enough space and opportunities to produce organic food. So there are countries like Russia and others that have banned and implemented various types of bans and restrictions on GMO foods. It is bewildering to try to keep track of it all. So you can go to a website like gmo-free-regions.org, where they have this comprehensive map centering on Europe with all of the different countries, talking about the different restrictions. So for example, excuse me, if you click on Portugal, you can find the 3 regions that have declared themselves GMO-free and the 27 municipalities all over Portugal that have passed GMO-free declarations, and you can find information and maps and links to actual institutions and legislation. Really quite a comprehensive list of information here for all of these countries, including some not in Europe, like the United States, although humorously enough, if you click United States, you get this page is not available. But I think that's just an error on their menu there. In fact, if you go to America's United States, you can find the information for the US here. Some of this information seems a bit dated. There's a GMO-free Europe 2015 map that might be better at this. But one resource on this page that I found exceptionally handy was this biosafety scanner, which I am just finding as a result of looking at this information today. And this is an extremely comprehensive list of things that you can search. So for example, if you want to select something like canola and you look at a region like North America and you look at my home and native land of Canada and my home province of Alberta and press submit, you can find out that 96.4% of canola in Alberta is GMO. And you can look at all sorts of data here: authorization, compulsory labeling, product type. You can look by particular strain and patent. You can look at the evaluation index, conventional seed imports. They have all sorts of links to the actual legislation and the Canadian Food Inspection Agency and all of these types of resources here. An extremely large and comprehensive database here that, if nothing else, should give you an idea of just how mind-boggling it is to try to sort through all of this information to find out what different crops have been approved and in what places and at what times and what foods they're likely to end up in, to the point where you start to realize that in certain places, like North America, it is virtually impossible to be completely GMO-free unless you are growing everything yourself from heirloom seeds. So again, this is an interesting resource and something I suggest people will check out. Of course, I'll put the link in the show notes for this episode. But basically, this all stems from that winning video that I posted the other day, talking about winning and positive trends, positive developments, good news stories. I am happy to report dozens and dozens and dozens of comments from different users with dozens and dozens and dozens of links to different stories, people talking about their own personal experiences, trying to spread this information to others and finding people to be increasingly receptive to this information now. We have some counterintuitive examples of people pointing out bad things that are happening and how that can actually be a flip side good, because the more tyrannical these governments get, the more people and the quicker people around them wake up. So we saw, for example, some talk about SB 277 in California, I believe it is, and other legislation. So lots of things going on all around the world to celebrate, to applaud, to be thankful for, to be positive about. But this particular story caught my eye. I like the specificity of it and the fact that it is part of an important and long-term trend that we need to support. I mean, obviously, there's still a lot more work that needs to be done on the GMO front. So my hat's off to Info9 for providing this story, as well as Sal Jorge also provided a link to this story, and I is Bloke also provided a link to this story. All three of them providing different links to the same news story. So all three of them will be declared the co-winners of this contest. Again, I appreciate every single comment that came in from every single user. And I really do suggest that you check out that thread if you haven't yet done so. A big pat on the back to everyone who participated in it. All of you are winners, but in a more literal, real sense, Info9, Sal Jorge, and I as Bulk are the winners of the contest. So I will get in touch with them about their winning Corbett Report DVD. All right, once again, something to applaud, something to be thankful for. If you have more ideas for winning stories, positive developments, things of that nature, you can, of course, always send them our way to myself and or James Evan Pilato at MediaMonarchy.com via Twitter, through the Good News Next Week hashtag, or through our respective contact forms or email addresses. Please do keep the good news stories coming in. We do try to highlight something every single week that is a positive development, because, again, all doom and gloom all the time is not good for our psyche, and it is important that we do look to and applaud and celebrate and try to emulate these types of victories when they happen. Again, a lot more work to be done on the GMO front, but we will continue to do so. Keep an eye out for my International Forecaster this weekend, where I talk about the business of biotech.